All right, guys, welcome to part 2 of chapter 6. This section is going to focus on the model of strategic learning. In the Blackboard under week 6, you will see you have a handout for model of strategic learning. It's going to be the big box with the triangle in the middle. That's going to be an excellent resource for you, especially for exam 2. Everything we do in this class is built on this model. So I didn't just make it up. It is meant to make us better learners. Again, if you remember chapter 6, we talked about how to be Batman, how to know what we need to know, and that's what all this is. It's being strategic. So it's not walking into classes blankly and having no tools and no preparation for the course. The idea is to know, again, a lot of what we need to know is about ourselves, what our strengths are, what our goals are, and what our values are all come into play. And we need to know what learning is. Learning is not something that just happens to us. We unfortunately are not sponges that just soak things up and then we know things, right? There is some building to it and some exercises. Your brain, like everything else, is a muscle, and I've used this analogy before, but we don't go into the gym on the first day and just start lifting 200 pounds. We have to build up to it, and your brain is the same way. Learning is a process. It requires a lot of repetition, a lot of practices, and really focusing on what it is you need to know. So you see right here, this is directly from your book, What is Strategic? Relating to the identification of long-term and overall aims and interest, carefully designed or planned to serve a particular purpose or advantage, and then learning as the acquisition of knowledge or skills through experience, studying, or being taught. So putting this together, strategic learning is really just having that plan, understanding why you're there, what you want to get out of it, and then grabbing those knowledge skills. Strategic learners are the students who study and learning as who view studying, and learning as a systematic process. And like I said, because it is a process, you have to build up. You have to learn steps in order to get to, again, your final degree, your final goal. You can't walk in and learn everything there is to learn about computer science and walk out, right? It takes years of building and learning some math and some other pieces that help you understand the way computers code and the way that different softwares like Python work. Those are all processes. You can't just walk in and know that after the first day. Love to tell you that we could, but we can't. You also have to understand that under a degree, it is under your control. So think about that growth mindset. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to have things that you can't control. It might be a professor. It might be the timing of the class because, you registered late or something caused you to register late that you couldn't control. All those things will happen. For the most part, it's under your control, but not every part of it. So then you're going to have to learn how to deal and how to cope with your setbacks. And then, as I said, this whole course is built on this model. All right, so this is sort of a pared down version of the same handout that's in Blackboard for you. And it's going to be, this is the visual, and then I'm going to go step by step in the PowerPoint for each one of these points. So don't forget on me. But you can start in the middle. The learner is you. You are the triangle. Everything in here is what you control. Everything is going to be what your skill, your will, your self-regulation, that's all the stuff that you can control. Then we get out here, and this is your academic environment. And of course, I'm going to break this stuff down for you. That tends to be what you can't control. You can go to the library. Maybe you go for a quiet study place, but somebody's being loud. Or it's just really crowded and you can't even find a desk. That's the part that you can't control. So those are things we're going to talk about. All right. So remember from your triangle, you're talking about skill is the top of that triangle. That's what you know about yourself as a learner. This is where that self-reflection and self-awareness really comes in handy. You need to know what different types of academic tasks, strategies for learning. So what do you use? Do you use flashcards? Do you use, I've had students who make a song out of their notes to help them remember. There's different things. You use a study group. Do you use any online resources, Khan Academy or anything like that? You have to have these strategies for learning And as I said before, your science course and your English course are not probably going to use the same strategies. There is not a single strategy for your whole academic career. You're going to need a toolbox with different strategies. And then your skill and ability to use effective learning, planning, and study skills, which again is the model of this course. Many of you have done the time management project, so you've had time to go back and see how many hours you're spending studying, doing your work. We've talked about procrastination. Do you have skills to help overcome that? Do you have somebody that can help support you? What is your plan? Because that's what it's going to be boiled down to. And then your will gets into your state of mind. Motivation is super, super tricky. It is very, very fluid. You can start off very, very motivated. I've seen this, and then usually about 2/3 the way into the semester, especially in the fall, because you also have the holidays coming up, a lot of students' motivation slips. 16 weeks does not sound like a long time, and then sometimes it feels like forever for students. So you really have to pay attention and self assess what's going on with your motivation. If you feel yourself losing motivation, you need to look into why. Are you burnout? Why are you burnout? What strategies can you do? Do you need to focus a little bit more on your self care? Is there something else you can take off your plate to get you through the next couple of weeks because you have a lot going on with class? What can you do? Also, think about your feelings about learning. If you had a bad learning experience, maybe as a kid in elementary, middle, high school, how does that affect you now? We also talk. This is again goes back to that growth mindset. If a child was told when they were little that they're bad at math, sometimes they carry that with them. So understanding your feelings so that when you walk in a math course, you're not like, ugh, I can't do it, because that kind of sets you up for failure. So what are your feelings about it? And just knowing that you might just need a little bit more work. Also, your abilities. Do you know that you can do it if you just really commit to these extra things? And then your commitment to personal goals. That's that last part. Sorry, my Google Slides is being wonky. Remember, we talked about goals and values. Why are you here? What are you trying to achieve? I think this gets really tricky for you guys in the first couple of years of college because you are doing more general education courses than you really probably want to. So remember your goals. Use that to keep you motivated. Get through this EUC course. Get through this government course. Get through this English course, because the sooner you do, you get to jump into those courses that you're super excited about. Computer science, psychology, whatever your major is. And then that self-regulation, which is what I kept harping about. What's going on with you? What are you doing to help curb some of that? So remembering our time management, that's why we pretty much start off with that. You really have to pay attention to your time, and it's tricky for you guys because it changes every semester, right? You enroll in new courses, you have new professors, and you've got to learn their style. You've got to learn how much time each course is going to take out of you. It really does change. So it's really important to have a way to manage your time, whether it's an electronic calendar, whether it's a paper calendar. You have to have this plan. How do you feel regulating your emotions? I always tell students that if they notice that they get into a class and they're always super angry, you need to know why. Is it because you're hangry? Do you need to build in a break to eat real fast? Even in this virtual learning environment, sometimes we forget to eat, especially if you're balancing courses that make you log in live. It's easy to try to pile them in back to back and forget to take care of yourself. Be sure to plan something out. If you have a bad test and every time you attend that class or every time you log in that class, are you feeling that anger? Then you really need to go in and check that anger. Did you have a bad test because you didn't prepare and you're mad at yourself? Did you have a bad test because you feel like the professor didn't prepare you? And what can you do? Can you work with a professor? Can you work with a learning lab tutor to sort of overcome that? Did you just have a bad day and wake up and somebody kicked your puppy and then you had to log into this test? That's fine too. We all have bad days, but you have to leave that anger on that bad day, because if you carry it into the rest of the semester and into the rest of this course with you, then it's going to create those barriers for you and make it harder for you to get motivated, make it easier for you to procrastinate and get the work done. What are your study choices? Are you studying? We just recently in chapter 5 talked about our study environment. What are you doing to set that stuff up, minimize distractions? And then are you monitoring your progress towards goals? Meaning, are you using the SMART format we talked about? Do you have your short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals? And are you kicking them down so that you can actually see that progress? And that will also tell you if you're not meeting those goals that you need to reassess something to get back on track. And that's all that means. All right, and then that last part, academic environment. So this is everything on the outside of the box. This is the things that impact your learning process, but you don't have as much control over. So you need to know what your academic support resources are. Remember, we did the scavenger hunt specifically for this reason. So you would know how to access the library, the learning lab, advising, student support services if you're going through a hard time. You need to know the requirements of assignments, and this one is key. Remember that each professor gives you a syllabus at the beginning of the semester, and that is basically our contract with you. It should include an outline of the assignments. There should be instructions that you need to read. Make sure that you understand the assignment. If you have a paper coming up, is it a 2-page paper or a 10-page paper? You need to know that now so that you can properly prepare how much time you need for research or writing and drafting, depending on your skill level with college level writing. You need to build in time to visit with a writing tutor and have them go over your paper. You need to know that about yourself and what's required of that assignment. Teacher expectations is a big one for a lot of students, and I will tell you right now a secret that's not a secret. K through 12 teachers, so your elementary, middle, high school teachers, in order for them to teach, they have to go to college and they actually get a degree or a certificate in teaching, meaning that they learn teaching strategies. They spend time, depending on the grade levels that they're going to be teaching, in a classroom with students before they even graduate college with the degree. The difference on the college level is, as professors, we are expected to get a degree in the subject that we are teaching, meaning a government professor will be a content expert in how government works. There is no teaching certificate or teaching degree that we need to get. So every class that you get a content expert in that subject. You don't always get somebody with a natural teaching ability or a teaching style that matches your learning style. And that can be difficult for students. And there's decisions you as a student have to make in that. Do you learn how to cope with it and use, again, these academic support resources? Some students absolutely drop the course, and that's okay, and they find another professor if that's what they feel they need to do. And don't ever drop a course without talking to your professor and or advisor first. But sometimes that happens. You really have to learn how to cope with a bunch of different personalities, because that's what college is going to be like for you. And you need to know those teachers' expectations. So I had a colleague when I first started teaching who told me she didn't allow makeup tests. So if you were sick the day, and this is obviously way before COVID, if you were sick the day that she had her test and you didn't show up, you got a 0. There was no working that out with her. And so you as a student have choices, because she put it in her syllabus. You knew on the first day that wasn't going to be an option. So you wake up on test day and you're feeling awful. You have to decide, do I take the 0 and look for extra credit or ways to make up the points? Or do I go to class and do the best that I can and hand her the test and maybe kind of hope that she catches my germs? You can hope that, but keep it in your brain. And again, that's before COVID. So those are the decisions that you as a student has to make, because she is not wrong in having that expectation. You may not agree with it, but she's not wrong. She's completely doing her job. It's just tougher on you. And that's something that you need to understand. You can't be surprised about it on test day after you've not shown up and after you've gotten the 0. And then the social context and where the learner lives. So that really is your support system. Do you have a family or friend support system? And also, this is the one that I really preach to students. Do you have somebody that maybe is hurting more than helping? So do you have that friend that wants you to go out every single night because they really don't understand the demands that college is asking of you. And they keep giving you excuses and reasons and you keep falling for it. You may need to put that friend on hold. And what I mean by that is just limit your time with them. Be like, hey, I'm really busy. We're going to definitely connect in December when the semester is over, but I can't right now, or the week of Thanksgiving. And set those boundaries to make sure that you're giving yourself the time and the space you need to learn. And that can be tricky, and I get it, especially if you have jobs, kids, maybe siblings or parents that need your help, any of that. But it's really about understanding your environment. And if you know that you have somebody a needy friend or family member that needs your attention every single weekend, something happens, right? The world falls apart every weekend for this person. You're going to have to either learn to say no or learn how to build your time so that you can give them the time that you think they need, if that's important to you. I don't want to speak to your situations, but you need to understand your situations and what you can control and what you can't control and what you can do within what you can control. And that's tough, but you have to know when you're able to write your papers and do your reading. And the communication has to be key. Let your professors know. Again, some of them will work with you and some of them won't, and you've got to know those expectations, and then how you balance that out. So here's broken up into some examples. So again, skill, knowing basic math, how to read, how to write your thesis statement. Will is feeling that discouraged. It's affecting your motivation. And you're excited about your newly decided major, so you can use that to help with the motivation. Knowing that you want to get that 3.8 because you need that to transfer to UT, and then setting those goals and then believing that you can be successful. Again, growth mindset. Knowing it may be hard, knowing that it might require more work than you want, but knowing that you can do it. There might be a little bit of sacrifice, and usually the sacrifice comes with our social time. Especially if you're working or balancing other things, but knowing that you can do it. I promise any student can do it. It's all about what tools and what you're willing to do for it. And then that self-regulation, making yourself go to the library or use the learning lab, and then giving yourself whatever pep talk you need before an exam. And I would even add to that, or reward after, right? I'm not great at pep talks before I'm doing something I don't want to do, but I am great at rewarding myself when I did it. So that can be something as well, so that you can look forward to it. And lastly, that academic environment, knowing how to access your tutors, having friends that support you. It's really helpful if you can make friends with students that are in the same classes with you, and you can build study groups out of that, because then you have the built-in studying and the support. Be really careful about that. If you meet a group of friends in a class and you guys are hanging out every day with your textbooks, but you're never opening your textbook, that is not a study group. That is a friend group. And that is fine unless it impedes your study time. So you need to be really careful about what your study groups look like and when they are actually study groups. And maybe your study group is a different set of friends, and then you have your social group as well. And then understanding office hours in the class syllabus. Again, those are contracts. Every professor is required to give office hours, and every professor is required to give you a syllabus. So you should have both of those things. Office hours are, I know, a little bit weird right now because they're virtual, and you just kind of have to click into a link, and then all of a sudden you're in some sort of meeting space with the professor instead of an office or a physical spot. But they are there to help you. So please, please, please use them, especially if you're struggling with the technology. This is the best time. I can tell you my office hours often sit empty, or if somebody pops in, they pop in for like 5 minutes. So if you really are struggling with something in the technology, use those office hours, because then this is where I can share my screen, or you can share your screen, and we can look at troubleshooting. And the professors can help you access the links or find the codes or whatever it is that you're struggling with. This is the best place to get that, especially in this weird virtual world that we're in. And again, everything in this class that you're going to do is some part of this strategic learning model. And if you look at the one from Blackboard that's a little bit more filled out, you're going to find all these steps that we've talked about. You're going to find time management. You're going to find study skills. We're about to jump into career knowledge. Will be coming up a little bit later. We talked about our study space. Later in the semester, we'll talk about some actual study skills and memory. We talked about goal setting, we've talked about growth mindset, and we've talked about available resources. That is all to help you become that Batman of learning. All right, so some of your takeaways is just thinking the mental process that you need the information, understanding how you think and how the learning process works, understanding what a learning objective is and then how it can help you, understanding how Bloom's taxonomy has the levels based on their complexity, and then, of course, the model of strategic learning and how that can help you and where everything in this class comes from. All right, guys, that is chapter 6. Thanks so much for listening.